All right, so Ronda Rousey recently called out Joe Rogan for turning on her after she lost the Holly Holm fight. Because if you remember before Ronda lost, Joe was a huge fan of hers. Some would say her biggest fan. I mean, he was hyping her up like crazy and got pretty carried away with it at times. Like, if you remember at one point, he said she could beat half the male bantamweight division.
I'm not happy that Ronda Rousey lost, but in a way, it makes things easier because there was a bunch of fucking people that were going, oh yeah? What about Ronda Rousey? She'll kick in. And I made the mistake of saying, like, hyperbole, okay? I'm the master of hyperbole. I exaggerate all the time. I was like, she could probably beat half the men bantamweights in the UFC.
Is that true?
No, it's not definitely not true. I shouldn't have said it at the time. Now it's definitely not true. She could beat a few that aren't good outside the sport. Look, if she gets guys in the ground, she could fuck a lot of people up. Her judo is 100% legit. Her arm bars are amongst the best.
And I think one of Ronda's problems was people are hyping her up too much. Because clearly there's a lot she could have been working on, but nobody's really being honest with her about it. Until obviously after she lost. But before that, Rogan was completely sold on her striking and thought her coach was doing a great job with her. Which, as we know now, are two other things that led to her downfall, her striking and her coach.
You guys training in Brazil on the beach, one of those workout days.
Oh, the open workout?
And you were fucking hitting mitts, and I was like, Jesus Christ. What the fuck is going on in your gym? Because your striking has accelerated in these giant jumps. Like every 3 or 4 months when I watch like you hit mitts, I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, speed is retarded.
Well, the thing is, people forget that like when I won the title the first time, it was like my 5th pro fight.
Joe, look at after
I was just getting
combinations,
started.
her maneuvering, her
Yeah.
defense. It's not like hit and stand. It's so much different,
Well, you have a lot of striking knowledge. It's very obvious. I've seen the work you've done with Ellenberger and with Travis.
Yeah, so Joe was just way too confident in her, probably because the hype around her was helping grow the sport in the women's division. But it was a double-edged sword. Obviously she became insanely successful and famous, but I think that probably distracted her and caused her to become way too cocky and confident, and the competition around her just ended up getting much better. And I think when she lost, pretty much everybody realized that, including Rogan. And it sounded like he tried to give her advice, but at that point it was too late and she wasn't going to listen to anybody. So I'll get into that and what Ronda recently had to say about Joe here in a second. But first, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Factor. With Factor, you can get high-quality, fresh, never frozen meals sent right to your doorstep every week that are ready to go in only 2 minutes. So this is perfect for people who are busy and don't want to spend their time cooking or just aren't good at cooking. It can help you skip trips to the grocery store, and it saves you time on meal prep and cleanup. And they have a variety of different meals. Their menus are updated weekly and include over 27 different meals and 33 add-ons. And you can choose your favorite meal or let Factor decide based on your taste preferences and meal history. And their meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals per week, and you can add more or reduce the number depending on your specific needs. Plus, you can easily skip a week if you need to. So if you want to get started today, make sure you head over to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 2lazy50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next box. Again, that's code 2lazy50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box. Yeah, so like I was saying, once Ronda lost, then Joe started to be more honest about her, and it was stuff that she needed to hear and listen to. But at that point, I think anybody who would criticize her game, she just thought of as a hater. Like she says Rogan turned on her, which obviously he did go back on a lot of the stuff he was saying. But I think her loss just woke him up, and he's like, oh shit, there's a lot she needs to be working on. Which is something she should have realized after she lost, but I think instead she just came up with a bunch of excuses. Like now she's going around saying that she fell down the stairs a couple weeks before the fight and tore her ACL and got a concussion, and then her mouthpiece was messed up during the fight, and then she said at that point she just had too many concussions and couldn't take it anymore. So I think she's also kind of pissed that Rogan and the people who turned on her didn't wait 9 years to hear the full story before they commented on her loss. Like this was recently brought up when she was on the Chris Cuomo project, and he mentioned how mad she must have been hearing everybody talk about how she wasn't what she was made out to be, and the competition just got so much better than her. Meanwhile, the only reason she was losing is because of the head injuries, she claims, which Chris Cuomo, of course, completely believes, and he's kind of just insulting Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes. because he says Ronda's losses had nothing to do with the competition. And he's like, yeah, if anybody hit you in the head, you would have been basically out.
What was it like for you to have people doing all this guessing about whether it was fear or you'd lost your heart or that the game had caught up to you and there were just different skill sets around you that you couldn't compete with anymore? And you wanted to say this, that this is not what it is. I can't. My kid could hit me in the head and it might destabilize me. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with my head. Why?
Yeah.
What was it like to not say that?
You know, it was really like disappointing just to see how happily everybody had turned on me and how, you know, people like Joe Rogan who were like crying in the ring out of the honor of being able to call my fights had like, you know, people I considered friends in the media so quickly, you know, turned on me.
And it sounds like she really just couldn't handle people being honest about her for once. Like, I understand Rogan and a lot of people got carried away with the hype and were just kind of blinded by everything that was going on. But as a commentator, you know, if Rogan had continued on the Ronda Rousey hype train and started making excuses and defending her like crazy and was just in denial about what was happening, then he would have lost all his credibility. So at least he was able to be honest about it, even though I'm sure he knew Ronda wouldn't handle it well and it'd probably ruin their relationship. But he never even really said anything that bad about her. You know, I think most of it was just constructive criticism, which she definitely needed to hear. You know, if she had listened to him, it probably would have gone much better. Like, he definitely wanted her to get a new coach and probably take more time off and definitely not fight Amanda Nunes. And it's funny because he even brings up some of the head injuries. He's like, yeah, if you're going to take that many kicks to the head, you got to take time off. Like, that really takes a toll on you. So he even takes into account the concussions that she got.
I mean, I remember Edmund telling me that, you know, he had a background in Taekwondo and, you know, he can't kick Ronda and no one's going to be able to kick Ronda. I was like,
You're like, Evan.
I was like, okay.
Evan, what the fuck happened? You said you.
I remember just from him saying that, I was like, okay, what? Can I just see you kick? Can I just see what this background looks like? Like, it's just a goddamn giant difference between her approach. She need a lot of things.
Yeah.
She need a lot of things because people knew, first of all, she never shoots for doubles. She's not taking you down with a lower body attack. It's always upper body, and it's always a clinch, and she clinches with her left arm. I mean, Greg Jackson and Jackson Winklejohn, they all figured that out, and Holly had the solution for that.
Yeah.
You know, and also there's another thing is when you get fucking head kicked into oblivion that way, like you need a lot of time off, a lot of time with no sparring, no nothing.
Especially,
and you have to go to them. You have to go to them, and you have to like submit yourself and say, look, let's fix this. Let's fix whatever I'm doing, and let's see if we can take this to the next level because the sport evolved and the sport passed her by. Like she was at the very top, but if you build it, it's like that Field of Dreams movie. You build it, they will come. And when she built the women's bantamweight division and became this dominant force and stopped all these people and looked invincible, all those women were coming up below her, and they were getting better, and they were evolving, and they were like the rest of MMA. They were reaching this incredibly high level. Whereas the women's MMA movement in the early days, you know, 3-4 years ago, if you watched women's MMA, the skill level was nowhere near the holes in the preparation, the distractions, the fact that she had, you know, movie deals going on. They wanted her to do Roadhouse, and she's scripts and this and agent meetings and all the bullshit, man. It's like a fucking Hollywood. It was like a Hollywood script.
Yeah.
Like, this is what happens to you.
So I don't think Rogan really has anything against her. I mean, this is a pretty fair assessment of what happened. You know, he still gives her a lot of credit and talks about how the coach was a big problem and just all the outside distractions. And I think he would probably even take some blame for hyping her up too much. But I'd like to hear what he has to say about it now that she's doing this press tour and giving all these excuses and talking about how he turned on her. I don't think he's said anything about it yet, but I guess maybe he might be having her on his podcast. That would be interesting. But I feel like she probably wouldn't want to do it. You know, she clearly isn't a big fan of his, even though I'm sure Joe would be open to having her on. So I guess we'll see. You know, if it happens, I'll probably cover it. So make sure you subscribe, and then make sure you go check out my Patreon account. There's a ton of extra content on there. I make a new video every week that's around 25-30 minutes, and there are over 70 other videos on there. So if you're a fan of the channel and want more content from me, make sure you check it out. I'll put a link in the description.